Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this first public online talk from the Contemporary Art Society of Wales in 2024. I'm Roland Davis, Vice Chair of CASW, and I have pleasure of introducing this evening's speaker, Nigel Prince. Good evening, Nigel.
Hello, Roland.
Now, Nigel will be very well known to many of you. Nigel was appointed Director of Artes Mundi in 2019 and was interviewed by CASW President Peter Welklin about Artes Mundi 9. Now Nigel is going to talk to us about the planning and realisation of Artes Mundi 10. Nigel's agreed to take questions at the end of this talk for those of you who are joining us on Zoom. We'd like you to put your name and question into the chat box, and when we get to the point for questions, I will explain how this works. So Nigel, over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Roland. Thanks, CASW, for joining us this evening. Everybody out there, however many people are out there, and also I just express my thanks for the continuing support of Artes Mundi. It really does make a difference to have CASW as part of the bigger consortium of supporters, enabling us to do what we seek to do, to work with audiences and communities across Wales. So yeah, thanks again for the support for this our 10th edition. You'll excuse me if my voice is a little gruff. I'm I think coming down with the dreaded lurgy that seems to be going around at the moment. What I've prepared is a slideshow, really. Some of you may have seen some maybe have seen all, some may have seen none of the different venues that Artes Mundi 10 is presented at. 5 venues across 4 cities and towns in Wales. So I thought if I provide an overview of those, half a dozen or so images for each of the 7 artists, and just give you some sort of headline information about each of their practices and the works that we have on display. And then, of course, feel free to ask any questions whatsoever that you may already have in mind, or that may not be answered by some of the information I give over. So I will share screen. I can do that. I've arranged it alphabetically, so it sort of jumps around a little bit in terms of you know where we are in Wales as well. So it's a little bit of a magical mystery tour around the nation this evening. So Artes Mundi 10, it's our 20th anniversary and the 10th edition. And for the 10th edition, we were asking all sorts of questions internally and with our board of trustees in terms of how we might celebrate that sort of the significance of that milestone reaching the 10th edition, and to also I think signal up the continuing legacy of what Artes Mundi has enabled and brought to the broader cultural ecology of Wales since it was founded in 2000. Part of the thinking around that was we wanted to present something at arguably a broader scale and ambition than it had before. And I subsequently found out this actually chimed with an ambition of the founding chair of Artes Mundi, William Wilkins, always envisaged that Artes Mundi would have a nationwide presence within Wales somehow. So we set about putting that in action, and maybe I can speak more to that as we carry on. So the first artist is Munira Al Sal. She's Lebanese Syrian, was born in Lebanon during the Lebanese Civil War, and she's showing at National Museum in Cardiff. The centerpiece for her exhibition is this disassembled tent in the gallery space there, this sort of conical hat-like form, and surrounding blue side panels. Core to Munira's practice is the sense of, I think you can almost consider her a gatherer of stories, oral traditions within particular cultures are important to her. Wordplay, origins and the evolving nature of language, and the collecting of stories through the people that she works with. Not all, but a significant part of her work is collaborative in some way. And so this tent piece is rather typical of that, where she works on the embroideries of the panels. She generates the drawings herself, but then the patterns are embroidered with a team of women in Lebanon and a team of women in the Netherlands, where Munira now lives. And these groups of women who she continually has an ongoing relationship with, in terms of the stories that are told. Women, obviously, from the Middle Eastern region who are in the Netherlands, are living in exile, who found themselves moving there for a whole variety of reasons to do with various war and crises and environmental problems, as well as cultural and war and other kinds of conflict. And all of this is embedded within the works themselves. In this view, for example, the sort of pale grey panels you see stitched onto the back of the heavily embroidered blue panels contain different stories from the individual women. We've shown 7. There are 12 in existence, and we're showing 7 because that felt like the natural arc around that hat form, within the as a sculptural presence. And the little dark blue panel at the bottom of this central panel that you can see, that is the name of all of the women who are a part of the team of embroiderers. A lot of the symbolism and iconography within this particular structure is around movement and migration, and harks back to almost to Phoenician times, really, with those Mediterranean cultures, whereby there was an exchange through travel, through economy, through goods across and through the Mediterranean. And so the imagery is redolent of that and recalls those evolving histories within that part of the Mediterranean coast where Munira is from. Quite exquisite, heavily involved surface detail to all of these panels. Also, a number of the same fabric embroidered by Munira form the part of a series of costumes on the opening weekend of Artes Mundi 10. And this is the Oasis One World Choir, who were based in Cardiff, and are similarly made up of individuals who are resident in Cardiff and in South Wales, some of whom were born here, some of whom found themselves here through seeking asylum or seeking refugee status. And so the performance unfolded starting in the large lobby of entrance lobby of the museum, with a series of songs and performances, and slowly moved up the staircase through into the gallery space where Manira's artwork is exhibited. And you see the two figures in the background holding up another of the embroidered panels. The costumes, as I say, were embroidered by Manira as well. And the songs that were performed were sort of like traditional folk songs, or ones that had been written by various participants in the choir, reflective of their own stories. So again, consistent with Manira's practice in that way of creating these platforms, creating these spaces for storytelling, for allowing the personal stories that speak to the in micro ways, sort of speak to the macro conditions about loss, about trauma, about conflict, about migration as the larger themes within her practice. Also within her presentation at the National Museum are a series we've made. It's an ongoing piece that Manira started in 2012. I strongly retain the right to be frivolous, and what it is a series of drawings which occur through Manira meeting people, similarly from the Middle Eastern region, in a city where she happens to be working, perhaps on an exhibition or an art project. And then through a sort of social exchange of sitting down at a table and having a cup of tea together, the conversation that ensues, Manira makes one of the drawings as a portrait of the person who is sitting opposite her. And sometimes these are annotated with script, Arabic script, as a snippet or an extract from part of the conversation and part of the personal stories that Manira and the contributor exchange between themselves. And for Artes Mundi 10, Manira made a series of research visits to Cardiff. And I think we have around about 45 of these drawings on display. And around about 12 or 15 of them are through participants who Manira met. Another part of I think an important part of the reciprocal exchange through sharing of stories is that, as well as the one drawing that Manira keeps as part of the ongoing artwork, the archive as it were, she also makes a second version of it, and that is gifted back to the person who takes part in the process. Other parts of her presentation at the museum, there's this sort of reading area. She works collaboratively with other writers and thinkers, in particular women, on a magazine that can't be purchased or bought or obtained in any way, but it is used in situations such as the exhibition or by invitation. And often, and again, a consistent theme is that Manira reflects on often women's struggles within the patriarchal systems of the Arabic world. So this is a sort of reading area with this pink embroidered fabric canopy, and there's various scatter cushions around, and table and copies of the latest version of this magazine called Not Only Arabic, which is again full of stories and reflections by women who have found themselves exiled from Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Palestine, etc., within that part of the Mediterranean. And also, just in this image, you just see 6 these small, highly coloured embroidered pieces. We are showing 12 from a series of 24 pieces, these sort of coloured frames with a little embroidered image and a word in Arabic. And this is sort of really to the core of her practice, and this interest in language and how language is not a static thing, but evolves and shifts not only over time, but through displacement or through migration and immigration. And so this work is takes the word love from a 13th century Muslim writer who analysed the root of the Arabic word for love and the various meanings that can have with slightly different script. That runs the whole sort of gamut of what love might mean. So, something that's very caring, something that's very loving and passionate and mutual, through to something that is not as soft, something that is perhaps more aggressive, or something that is a deeply held passion, or something that is about jealousy. So each of the individual 24 pieces are a little embroidery of an image and a diagram with the Arabic script for those different meanings of the word. So, and again, I think that consistent with her practice, that interest in language, that interest in storytelling, that interesting in how things are not static, either through enforced or movement and migration or otherwise. Also showing at the National Museum in Cardiff is Rushdie Anwar, originally from Kurdistan. He was displaced as a very young boy to Australia as a refugee from the war when ISIS invaded. And all of Rushdie's work is a reflection on those personal memories and recollections, and revisiting his homeland, Kurdistan, a country that is not recognized within nation states. He's from the part of Kurdistan that forms part of southern Iraq, and all of the work is primarily photographic and archival based work, is reflective of that part of the world and his experiences, and that part of the world that has been constantly in flux, either through war or through imposition of colonial powers, or through the imposition of different ideological regimes. And Rushdie is very careful not to, he doesn't take sides. So the imagery that you see might be to do with historic imagery, to do with British colonial control of that area, or French colonial control, or it might be more recent imagery through where a Christian church has been desecrated through ISIS, or a mosque has been destroyed through religious war. So it's more about the reflecting on the very nature of how these different extremes come to clash. Centerpiece of the exhibition are these series of 12 wooden boxes on plinths that are charred wooden boxes. Each has a glazed lid, which is printed with 12 different Islamic patternings. And contained within the boxes are some of Rushdie's own photographs that he took of the destruction around his hometown and district, the buildings, the landscape. These photographic prints he then sort of burnt and encased them and embalmed them really in resin. So they become these almost funereal, I think, in some regards, vessels that sort of contain the ashes of what has been and what might emerge from those ashes in the future. The larger piece that you see here of the 3 color prints on a black and white wallpaper is a new piece that was made for the exhibition. I should say that the large tent piece of Manera's was a new piece, as well as that sort of reading room area and some of the drawings. And typically, Artes Mundi works to present a display by an individual artist with a mix of existing work and some new work, some of which we're able to support the production of. This large scale piece, new piece by Rushdie, the color images show a Christian church that was completely destroyed by ISIS, and it sits on the backdrop of a mosque that was equally destroyed by ISIS, and all sorts of other information within that as an artwork is there. So the frames of the color images, for example, they are historic late 18th century British frame molding from the particular colonial era that has echoes with other moments of shift and change within the geography of that part of the world. This is a piece of work called A Few Lines of History, again showing similar imagery to those contained in the boxes. These manipulated images, some of which Rushdie has taken, some of which are historic and archival, that are brought together in these different configurations on these shallow shelves to tell the story of that part of the world, really, of Kurdistan. And then in the adjacent room is a series of new works, all which were made for the Sharjah Biennial around about spring last year. And all of these are reflective of a particular moment in Kurdistan history when there were the different claims of French and British colonial rule to that part, and the formation of Iran and Iraq, etc. So the British and the French military leaders, and then the prayer mat in front of them is embroidered with the map, with how the territory was divided up between these two Western powers. These two pieces on the wall that you see, the piece on the left, there's a sort of stream, and the figure in the image is praying, and his shoes are on the other side of the stream, and that was used as a demarcation line between Iran and Iraq, as sort of the arbitrary nature of taking out a ruler and a pen and pencil and just marking it up regardless of where the indigenous peoples lived and worked, and what sort of tribal affiliations or whatever there were within those kind of territories. The megaphone piece actually plays a sort of collaged soundtrack of music from this colonial era when Kurdistan was under the influence of British and French rule, and it's a sort of collage of sort of propaganda, messaging, radio messages, music of the time, radio broadcasts, etc., etc. So rather like some of the imagery that is collaged and layered up, there's that oral dynamic to it as well. At Oriel Davies in Newtown, and also the big light box above the entrance at Chapter in Cardiff, is Carolina Casedo. Carolina's London-born to Colombian parents, and a lot of her work is really centered on examining environmental justice, changes to territory and to land through environmental pressures, primarily man-made, corporate-led, and also the role that women play within protesting against those extractive industries that despoil the land and displace people. And when Carolina first arrived, we told her the story of the Wealth Valley that was flooded to provide the reservoir of drinking water for the Northwest, Liverpool, Manchester. So that was sort of an area of interest for her. And similarly, the Greenham Common movement and the embroidered and textile banners that the women made, who, the organization actually sort of starting in Wales. So she tasked us with wanting to include some of the original Greenham Common banners in her exhibition, and you can obviously see the large scale one there with on the left hand side of the image, and there's a second one there where it says Women for Life. They're two of 4 banners that we were able to loan from the Peace Museum in Bradford. And to the left of the Greenham banner, the Women for Life one with the tree and the symbols for peace and women that you see, Carolina's own banner, this white one that bridges across the corner of that gallery room, has a series of printed drawings of various women environmental protesters through the ages, including some of those Welsh women within that. So, you know, a really simple but direct and lovely way to make connections to those lineages of women protesters centered on challenging in environmental change. Other works in her exhibition, the large-scale drawings you see on the wall are go under the umbrella title of mineral intensive, and then each one has a subtitle to do with a particular mineral that is mined. So there's aluminium, the black and white one, then the copper, cobalt, lithium, precious metals that are used in all sorts of manufacturing today, from our cell phones through to our homes, through to you know, architecture, etc. All of them sort of these rather sort of narrative drawings that that depict moments in history, moments where there is particular mining excavation going on, centered on a particular mineral, and how that affects the indigenous populations of that part of the world where the mine is. The large scale sort of meandering table that you see that weaves through the space is called the River Serpent book, and this topographical folded and concertinaed book contains imagery of various landscapes that has been affected by damming and by the creation of reservoirs, which again has the knock-on effect of displacing communities, destroying the land, or making the land unusable for the peoples who over centuries have lived and worked there. We're also, as part of Carolina's show, we're premiering 2 new videos, and this piece here, called Fuel to Fire, follows a traditional salmon spawning route in a river in Colombia, and that was one of the reasons why we felt Carolina's work would resonate in particular in Newtown, given the proximity of the River Severn to the gallery space. You know, it's a short minute walk away. There's a set of volunteers, a community, River Severn Trust, that the Oriel Davies has a relationship with, that we've been able to develop a series of community projects with, all of them in a sense riffing on the themes that come out of works on display in Carolina's show. In the second room, for those of you who know the gallery there in Newtown, there are 2 major pieces. There are these 2 large-scale prints on silk from an ongoing series begun in 2015, 2016 called Water Portraits. And again, they are these sort of abstractions of landscape where damming has occurred, to create these rather seductive, rather beautiful imageries by taking an image, repeating it, flipping it left to right, mirroring that image, create these unfolding, enfolding patterns. And these silk banners almost act like canopies to create a viewing zone for the second video, which we're premiering, which is about a reciprocation, a traditional indigenous ceremony in Colombia, where there is a reciprocal relationship with nature. The idea that we don't, as human beings, we don't misuse nature, but we have a relationship that we can give back as much as we take, whereby it's not whereby natural materials, natural resources are not things merely to be exploited, but are to be lived with in harmony for the benefit of us, for the planet, and for our continuing sustained existence, of mutual benefit, I suppose. And what the video depicts is this ceremony. The river is one that has traditionally been used for gold mining. And you see one of the people, a representative of the village and one of the people who live there, actually going into the water and performing a series of actions and gestures, and then returning some fragments of gold into the river itself. So again, has a certain kind of beauty about it, but it's about that sort of harmonic, sustainable set of relationships between us as humans and the world in which we live. On the outside of Oriel Davis, there are 4 doors, and each of these contains a graphic image, which are a series of plants that have been traditionally used over the centuries for women's health, maybe at times of childbirth or particular disease, etc. Things like yarrow, for example. And so each of these exists as this graphic image on each of the 4 doors, and this will continue to be presented there beyond the exhibition inside, and directly addresses the park that the gallery in Newtown sits in, and has become the jumping off point for a whole series of continuing workshops. This is Carolina's piece at Chapter in Cardiff, and what is depicted here in the image is an aerial view of a valley that was flooded and was dammed for hydroelectric and to create reservoirs of water. But since subsequently those dams have been taken away, and you actually see nature rejuvenating, regenerating itself, and hence the text, "This land is a poem of river healing." Nature is reclaiming the land and actually reclaiming in the best possible way the landscape, now that the humans' interaction of these dams have been taken away. Back to the National Museum, Alia Farid. She's from Kuwait and Puerto Rico. A lot of Alia's work really is almost like a lament for the environmental changes and the subsequent repercussions it has for the people and the indigenous peoples who live in that part of Kuwait and bordering into Iraq, in particular because Kuwait is a desert, but because it's oil rich, there's been the whole explosion of probably not the best word, the whole huge development of oil extraction and this sort of adopting this Western economy model, and the great wealth that generates for the few rather than for the many. But to feed all of that, water has to be extracted from the wetlands across the border, and with consequent devastation of the traditional water buffalo herding marshlands and wetlands of the people who find themselves there. So with Alia, we present 2 works. The first is this large-scale sculptural installation of these 5 water vessels. This image gives you an idea of the scale. They're around about 2.5 to 3 meters high each, and each of them is a water vessel of some form, be it like a jerry can, a jug. I think you can see the sort of the 4th going back from the front of the image diagonally. The 4th one is rather like an Evian water bottle that we see in supermarkets here. And into each of these is let a tradition, you see on this sort of bowl-like form vessel in the foreground, this inlet indentation, which is the form of a traditional public fountain, water fountain, as found. So again, a way to underline that these are vessels that in a contemporary way or in a historical way have been used to transport liquid, used to transport the stuff of life, water, the stuff of life. And yet these vessels themselves are made from fiberglass. They're quite elusive, really. In the flesh, they have an almost stone-like quality, but they're made from fiberglass and resin as a byproduct of the oil industry, the very thing that pollutes the environment and causes the environmental devastation, both in terms of nature, but in terms of also the people who live and work there. And then alongside that sculptural installation, we have a cinema-like installation of two short films. One was produced in Kibayash, which is the name of this district in Iraq where the traditional wetlands. And these are two short, around about 15, 20-minute pieces that don't have a linear narrative. They show the young kids, teenagers, who are some of the families who continue to live and work there. And it's really like this rather sort of intimate, poetic portrait of these families who continue to live and work in them. You see scenes of the children playing in the wetlands. You see scenes of them herding their water buffalo. There are exchanges with Alia off camera where she's asking about who lives where, and they're describing where there used to be a house, there used to be a community, but now that's gone away. And there's a real tangible sense of the number of dwellers is dwindling, and as the changes ever more are altered, and pollution is coming into the waters, which again makes it impossible to sustain a living in these ancestral places. So I say it's two parts. The first film is from 2022, which was commissioned for the Whitney Biennale. The second is a premiere for AM10. I say rather sort of beautiful, poetic portraits, snapshots, if you like, of people going about their daily lives. Up in the north of Wales, at Mostyn in Llandudno, and also in the Cafe Bar area, chapter is Taloy Havini, who some of you may have heard is the artist who was selected as the winner of the AM10 prize. Taloy is from Buka Island in Bougainville, which is part of the sort of archipelago of islands that make up part of Papua New Guinea, and is a territory that, again, you can see the broader themes that connect a whole number of these artists. Again, is a territory that has had all sorts of colonial claims to it, primarily because it's so mineral rich. Australia claiming it as a territory for one time. And Rio Tinto with the mining company, who in the 60s and 70s were responsible for the changes that we see. Taloy is indigenous from the Hakos tribe, and all of her work, similar to some of the other artists, is reflective of her own sense of place, is rooted in her own communities, is rooted in telling the stories and reflecting the stories of where some of her family continue to live. We present two pieces at Mostyn. One, this is called Where the Rivers Flow. It's a frieze running around a small gallery room of 40 photographic prints that trace the journey from the top of the mountain following the course of the river down into the delta. Some shots made through camera on a drone, others, Toloi shooting while she's holding the camera as she's moving through the landscape. And you slowly see the landscape change from this lush jungle, green, verdant environment through to signs of heavy industry, human interaction, despoilation of landscape, polluted rivers. The turquoise blue that you see there in that image is not enhanced digitally. It's actually how it appears. It's the copper remnants now from the blast mining that now continues to sort of poison the land, making traditional agriculture virtually impossible. Alongside that, which in a sense Toloi describes the photographs almost at a micro level, it's her personally moving through the landscape, is this large-scale 3-channel video piece. Each of the screens is 2.75 meters across, so you get the idea of the scale. It's filmed similarly to the photographs in Bougainville, and again follows the story, records the history, acts as a witness to those changes that the land has undergone, the remnants of the mining industry, the relics of those left behind within this sort of paradise, tropical paradise. The devastation of the spoilings, where when the land meets the river delta, nothing grows there now. And then these incredible scenes that look like they're out of some apocalyptic sci-fi movie of these copper leachings that continue to poison the water and the land. And then a member of Toloi's tribe, how they are starting to find a way to reclaim land and to find a way to make sense of what they have been left, what has been left behind, and what they can do to make sense of that. A short piece, it's around about 2.5 minutes looped, incredibly precise, moving, beautifully edited, structured piece. That's it. That's just very, very sort of has a real powerful poignancy to it as a piece. And then at the other end of Wales, in Cardiff, in the Cafe Bar chapter, what Toloi describes as something that is hopeful. The large-scale mural of the women in the surf at the ocean is some of Toloi's aunts, and it's part of their ancestral homeland. And at the sort of full moon at the time of the autumnal equinox, women would there's a ceremony of rather like the one I described in Carolina's work, where the women go into the surf as a way to sort of give thanks to the water for sustaining them. But this surf now, it's not what it was because of the pollution of the mining industry. So this was the mural image is one that her mum took in 1971, and it's an archive of family images that Toloi continues to mine in different way and find ways to use them. But sitting atop of that mural are these 1 meter square light boxes with Toloi's own photographs when she went diving of the coral that is now regenerating and rejuvenating itself. So a sense of, again, of nature taking back control of the land, rejuvenating and a regeneration, and arguably a much more hopeful future. A chapter in the gallery is Naomi Rincon Gallardo, who is from Oaxaca in Mexico. And all of Naomi's work can be quite dark in atmosphere. It's a heady mix across videos and watercolors and these sculptural objects of references to carnival, of references to Mesoamerican indigenous cosmologies and fables from that part of Central America, of folklore, of surrealist, imagined storytelling, and also coming very much from a feminist perspective and from a queering perspective of non-normative storytelling, and as a way to present alternative futures and alternative imagined other worlds, I think, in some regard. So what we're presenting at Chapter is a new trilogy that was begun in 2021. And it's the first time this UK premiere of this trilogy of video works with these sort of like monsters, and all of them are rooted in a moment when the idea that there is an eclipse, and at the moment of the eclipse, these female deities descend to Earth to rid the Earth of the evil patriarchal structures, and to right the wrongs that have been done, and to replenish nature. And so you see these sort of carnivalesque costumed monsters depicted within these videos, and there's cacophonies of sound and snippets of popular music. So in every sense, they're a real assault visually, sonically on the environment. And also throughout the exhibition are some of the objects that you see within the videos. This is the first room on the left as you enter. You see these masks that have internal lights and have like theremins in them that make these electronic noises. There is the vulture that welcomes you by flapping its wings as you enter the space. And then at the far end of the gallery, there's this other little creature whose hands wave and the lights flash on and off. So there is sort of gestures, and that they're all sort of on timers that make that happen. The watercolors in the background there are that's a small selection of a continuing body of watercolors that she makes, and there are around about 3 or 4 that pertain to each of the three videos. And in the final space, the previous 2 videos, there's Sonnet of Vermin and Verses of Filth, and this is the final video called Eclipse, which we co-commissioned with a consortium with La Casada Encidada in Madrid and Baltic in Gateshead. So that this is one example of how we're able to support artists in the production of new work that is then premiered within an edition of Artes Mundi. In Glenvivian at Swansea is Quintrin T, primarily a filmmaker from Vietnam. And she's really interested in the idea of sound, the idea of listening, and how listening is a way to uncover and reveal other ideas around place and history and story. The idea of how a particular sound or a particular song can be so evocative it can transport us from the here and now into another realm or into another another place or a different memory. So what we have in the gallery is an installation that you walk into, very darkened space, this sort of octagonal arena with various sort of seating in it. And as your eyes become adjusted to the light, you see the light levels fluctuates, ebbs and flows, whereby sometimes this foliage patterning is very clear and evident, as it is here. Sometimes it's less so, and it's much subtler. I'll just flick through those just to give you a flavor of the different sort of lighting effects. The foliage is created by a series of lights. You can probably see in the bottom left and bottom right-hand corner of this image, lights that are behind a set of chili plants. And also, as you can, I think you can make out in this image, there are these wooden flutes hanging from the ceiling. There we go. I think you'll see them more clearly in that really brightly lit one. And similarly, in the way that the light levels ebb and flow to create different shadow and shadow play, through the wooden flutes air is pushed by a compressor that creates this rather sort of haunting, poignant, at times quite shrill, at times quite calming, but yeah, quite haunting sort of notes. And I've got a little video that we may or may not be able to play. I'll speak a little bit more about this, and then we'll try that. And technically, if it doesn't work, I'll do a sort of very poor imitation of the kind of sound that that comes out of the wooden flutes. But all of this is the sound and the light levels is connected through a computer relay. You know, behind the walls, there's all this sort of computer gear, and that is actually over Wi-Fi is a connection to a forest in Vietnam. So the light levels, the fluctuation is and the sound coming through the flutes is generated by the wind and the weather conditions in this forest in Vietnam. And so what that does, if you think what I just said about T's work, she's really interested in how sound can transport you from one realm to another, from one time and one location to another. Physically within this installation, that is what happens. The forest in Vietnam is the site of a war atrocity when a series of prisoners of war who were heading back to camp after a day's hard labor happened upon this glade of chili plants. And then the sort of frenzy that occurred of them trying to pick these chilies, but all of the inmates were gunned down. So there's this sort of it's this scene of this terrible atrocity. A book of which that was published, which is still banned in Vietnam in 2000, with somebody who was recounting the story from the this moment from the Vietnam War. So that's what the work is rooted in. And if I just quickly go back, when you arrive in the gallery, before you enter the installation, you see some of the chili plants which are switched in and out so that they can stay healthy. But there are also a series of booklets which has an extract from this autobiographical novel, which is in Vietnamese and in Welsh and English. So either you encounter that on your way in or on your way out, and it lends this other dimension and dynamic to the installation itself. But there is something about the very nature of the sound itself that I think genuinely is transporting. And there is something that creates a sense of unease or a sort of, you know, the sense of a sort of poignancy and of something not being quite right. Now there's one of these are traditional wooden flutes from that part of Vietnam. So what I'll try and do now is play you this short extract of this video in the hope that you can see and hear it. It starts off very quietly and has different intensities. Don't know if you can hear that.
I'm not hearing anything, Nigel.
No?
Ooh.
That's weird. Shall I forgo that? Should we forgo this then?
I think so. I think it's just hasn't worked for us, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay, that's a shame. Anyway, the sound. I can hear it now. I can't stop it. There we go. The sound is sort of like a. It's rather sort of plaintive and mournful. You know, at various degrees of volume, depending on the air pressure from the weather conditions in the forest in Vietnam. So those were all 7 artists. I'm just going to cough and take a sip of water. And I think, is this an appropriate time to open out to any questions?
Right. Okay. So what I'd like everybody to do is use speaker view so that they get a chance to speak. I haven't seen, and you are able to unmute yourselves now. But at the moment, I don't have any questions in the. Oh, Elaine Moore's raised her hand. So Elaine, if you'd like to raise a question, we'd be delighted to hear from you.
Yes, thank you very much, Nigel. For me, it was a treat to be able to see the installations that I hadn't managed to view myself because they were somewhat distant for a person with mobility challenges. I wanted to ask about your choice of exhibiting some artists at multiple venues, because my sense was that particularly the first 2 artists you spoke about, who were both entirely at the National Museum, benefited from the fact that you felt the weight of their and range of their presentations. Whereas those artists who were shown in different places, had you not seen them, you wouldn't have had that sense of the breadth and the depth of what they were trying to say. So could you explain a little bit about that choice, which of course is a departure from the usual display?
Yeah, most certainly, Elaine. Because it was our 20th anniversary, we were keen to do something of a scale and a scope that hadn't been possible before. And for that to be within one city anywhere in Wales just wasn't possible. We were also reflective of our position as when I say national, I mean Welsh, not UK, but our position as a national / international organisation. And so if we are to be a national organisation, truly, then why would we confine ourselves to operating just within one city? Simultaneously, we were aware that some people would only see some. Some people would see all presentations. Some people would only see some. But overall, there would be we would be able to reach a greater audience by presenting across the country as a whole. And so that sort of outweighed the awareness that some people, for whatever reason, might not be able to see all, or might not be able to visit all of the venues. We were also concerned of how we could in part bridge that, in full recognition of that awareness. And so every artist has some presence in Cardiff, be it Carolina's large billboard scale piece above the entrance to chapter, or Trinity having a program of film showing in the cinema at chapter, for example. So we were keen that it touches really on the comment that you made, that while you might not have an idea of the full breadth because you haven't visited the gallery in Newtown or in Llandudno, there would be some information, some inkling there directly in Cardiff. But also on our website, we've produced a series of interactive tours to move through each of the exhibitions, rather like the technology of Google Maps. And of course, a digital interface is not the same as a physical interface, but it presents a certain opportunity for a certain kind of engagement with work that is maybe in a different town or city to where any of us might live, and does enable you to, so Carolina's exhibition, for example, if you are living in south of Wales and Newtown is not a viable place to travel to, you can, via our website, you can go onto this. It's the technology is called Matterport, and it's your own interactive tour of the gallery space, and you can physically, or digitally rather, virtually walk through the space and approach the different works that are hanging in the space or are sitting on the floor or on the walls. So we were keen to provide that as some kind of alternative. We were keen to have every artist have some form of presence in Cardiff. We were keen to reach larger audiences than are just confined to Cardiff, because some people in the north of Wales wouldn't necessarily make a visit if the exhibition was just in Cardiff, as it had been for the previous 9 editions. So that's like, we wanted to challenge our own sort of privileging, should we say, of an exclusive South Wales and across the border to Bristol or whatever audience. And one thing that is coming out of comments and observations that we're receiving. So Newtown, for example, attracts a very strong audience also from just across the border in the Midlands and from those central parts of Wales going out, to Aberystwyth. Similarly, Mostyn has a strong draw for audiences across in Cheshire and the Northwest, as well as those North Wales audiences as well. So I think for us, those pros certainly outweighed the cons, and as I say, we're very much part of the core of the thinking, wanting to have a more nationwide presence, and to be able to work at a scale and a scope in celebration of our 10th edition than we'd been able to do in the past. But in full recognition that some people would see some things and some people wouldn't. Yeah.
I rather expected that question to arise. I can't see any more in the box, but I know Sean had I can see a hand up, a follow-up question, which I think is probably reflective of having been an Artes Mundi trustee in the past, but I'll let her say it for herself.
Thank you, Roland. My question is actually a supplemental question to Elaine's question, and that is how you're going to evaluate the way in which you had this dispersed exhibition this year. I mean, are you just going to be looking at footfall figures, or are you collecting digital views? And in what way are you going to be able to collect the information that you need in order to find out whether it should be repeated?
Yeah, well, we a long time, several months before the exhibition opened, we're working with an independent evaluation company. There is a whole matrix of qualitative and quantitative data that we're in the process of collecting, and started before we started before any of the program, the exhibition, the public program, the community engagement projects, etc., before any of that came on stream, and it's a mix of all sorts of questionnaires, surveys, one-to-one or group interviews, the evaluation team actually visiting each of the venues, feedback from all of our partners in the venues, our peers. There's an internal aspect in terms of the Artes Mundi staff as well, our own reflections on the process, and trustees are involved in that as well. So to use the jargon, it's a 360 means of evaluation of hard data, bums on seats, numbers walking through doors, but also qualitative data capture through the evaluation team, visiting communities that we work with, spending time in galleries, approaching visitors filling in questionnaires that can be done there and then on a piece of paper, or there are QR codes in each of the galleries that you can scan with a phone, and those QR codes are also available. The questionnaires, etc., and the surveys are also available via our social media and via our website. So all of that will then be all crunched, and it'll be a very comprehensive report that covers aspects of visitor experience, visitors' observations, comments, reflections, the delivery team, both within Artes Mundi and our partners, the communities we engage with. The full kit and caboodle, really. And all of that will then certainly be part of a point of a sequence of reflective conversations, both internally and externally. I mean, anecdotally, I've already have a number of the venues we're working with already. I've got AM11 penciled into their programming, exhibition schedules. There are other venues in Wales who we've not worked with on this occasion who've approached and said, we'd like to be involved. In times of ever decreasing public support through the usual outlets and the competition for financial support elsewhere, the idea of working in partnership and collaboration and pooling resources whereby 1 + 1 = 5, whereby we can amplify each other's strategies and needs, I think in many ways can be a sound way of working together, not only for organizational benefit, but really primarily for audience and visitor and community benefit. You know, the very people and publics that we collectively serve really through what we produce.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Thanks,
Right.
Sean.
Look, we've virtually come to the end of the day. I can't see any more questions or hands up, and I'm very conscious of that. Oh, Louise Manifold. If it's a quick one, Louise, I'll let you do it. Where is she? No. Nothing's coming through. What's happened there? Have you got your microphone on? Try unmuting.
Can you hear me now?
We can indeed, Louise. Yes. Yes.
All right. This is only a really quick question. And just thank you, Nigel. It was fabulous to hear about the whole process. I suppose the big thing I was thinking as an artist is because the quality and the scale of the work presented, it must be a bit of a logistical nightmare to get everything together. And I just wanted to ask you, even just to talk very briefly about that. Now, I don't want to use the term logistical nightmare, but it seems like it's very ambitious work, and the scope of all the different places that you're presenting in. Just even to talk a little bit about how your production team manages to bring all of this together.
Yeah. Well, it's the fun part, really. Yeah. I mean, there's the very necessity of sitting in meetings or sitting at a computer making funding applications. I mean, there's a creativity to that as well, which part of me enjoys. But the potential to be working with artists, making studio visits, having conversations around selecting work, and then it's not me, it's another part of the Artes Mundi team who works with shipping companies to bring the work from wherever else it might be in the UK or Europe or further afield. Then obviously we have all of that kind of professional support, working with all of the different venues. We are also incredibly fortunate in having all of their expertise that they bring to the conversations, be that technical support, installation support, conservation, vista assistance, when the exhibitions are open, etc., etc. So while it is ambitious, and hopefully that comes through in the most positive sense of and understanding of that word, it really is the fun part, I think, of why people like me work in the art world, because there is something about a particular artist's work or a number of pieces by an artist's work that you just feel is so compelling that you want to share it with everybody, and you want them to feel as enthusiastic about it as you are. So the way in which we do that is by pooling resources, either individually or within teams, or in collaboration with our partners across Wales, or other suppliers to make all of that happen. I'm not sure that quite answers your question. I mean, there are some very pragmatic things that, how do you get an object that big into a building when the doorway is much smaller, so there are a few head scratching moments around that, but those kinds of issues. But but yeah, that problem solving, I suppose, is also part of that creative process, which is, I guess, which is, why somebody like me, and certainly if I can speak on behalf of the whole Artes Mundi team, is why we're involved in what we do, because we feel enthused and energetic and excited about the artists we're working with. We think very carefully in this edition about where those artists' work is being presented. So, it wasn't like an arbitrary choice that Toloi was in Llandudno or Carolina was in Newtown or Monera was in Cardiff, for example. That there was some very careful thinking and discussions with our partners around that decision making. And that's also reflective, because you want it to be reflective of where there are connections and relationships to be made and resonances with histories and communities and people in those places. So all of that enters into the logistics and the coordination, the arrangement of putting on a show like this. I mean, it does have being sort of biennial, it does have a different pace than, I used to be the director of a contemporary art museum in Vancouver. And of course, with a rolling program of, an exhibition every 2.5 months, that's a different rhythm and pace to your working life. This can seem incrementally inching forward, and then suddenly it accelerates like crazy. And so that becomes a different thing to become accustomed to. But yeah, I hope that in part answers part of what you were asking.
I think it's lovely to hear that, because I think it's really like what you're doing and how the work has been selected in all these different parts of represented across Wales is, to me, really, really exciting. I suppose coming from Ireland, where a lot of biannual programs or even national year, projects that happen every year annually are still located quite regionally.
Yeah, so America's there.
Those regions tend to generally be, Dublin, Cork, perhaps Galway.
Yeah.
But it's again, I think could learn a lot from what you're doing.
Well, there's a good friend of mine who represented Ireland at the last Venice Biennale, Niamh O'Malley. She lives in Dublin, as you know, then, but she's originally from Mayo, and last year I went across when her Venice exhibition was presented at the Model in Sligo, and then there was a whole weekend of talks in Castlebar, and there was something else. I forget where it was now in Mayo, but yeah. But as part, I think, really as part of that way to address the point that you're making.
In the west of Ireland, and particularly in areas like Mayo, because it's got kind of a lowish population, they do make a bigger effort for things. They make an effort to bring their audiences in.
Yeah. Which is what we need to do. We're certainly not complacent about any ways and we have this hugely extensive public program of talks and tours, public tours, community projects, all manner of things. Some of which are online, but the majority of which are in person. That continue to unfold and will be continuing through until about May or June, even after the exhibition is closed.
Okay, thanks, Louise. I'm going to let you into a secret. Louise and I have been in discussion recently about her talking to CASW, so I suspect we're going to be further involved in the Irish connection in due course. But I mean, most of all, thank you to Nigel. I think, Nigel, you're the first speaker who's actually sung to CASW in one of these. Yeah, I'll take singing with a liberal interpretation. I accept that, but I think, bearing in mind you virtually have no voice left, it was a valiant effort. In a moment, I'm going to invite everyone to say thank you to Nigel. But before I do, if anyone who's been participating would like to know more about CASW, including particularly how to become a member, please visit our website, casw.org.uk, for all the relevant information. Also, let me tell you that our next public talk will be on Tuesday, the 27th of February, when the speaker will be artist Christine Roy-Chowdhury. That will be an online talk, so please look out for details in due course. Finally, if everybody would like to put their cameras on and cheer, whistle, clap, etc. in the normal way, and say thank you to Nigel. Thank you very much, Nigel.
Thank you, everybody. Nice to see you all virtually. I hope many of you can get to see at least some parts of the exhibition. It's until the 25th of February. There's all sorts of other public programming going on, so do keep a look on our website as well for all of that. And I look forward to meeting some or all of you in person, in the coming weeks and months.
Okay, thanks very much, Nigel. Thank you, everybody. That's the end of tonight. Cheers.
Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.